Hey guys, welcome back here to another Pauper video. We are here not playing some gameplay this time, but I'm going to do a little bit of explanation. I am calling this the Jind problem, and that's not a problem with the deck Jind Wildfire. This is basically going to be a discussion video on the problem and what happened to Jind at Paupergeddon. So let's take a look. Hey guys, so basically, as you can see here, we are looking at Paupergeddon as the sort of get-go. This is the top 16, and basically this is the best performing Jind deck in 10th, which is fine. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, 10th is good, but when you look at the metadata, so you look at the Paupergeddon data, so this is this here, which you can find on Reddit. Obviously, it'll be in pretty much anywhere that you find, right? So the main thing to note, right, is Jind Wildfire here was #1 played deck in day 1 with 165 players, right? 165 players, and then only 19 made day 2. This was by far the most played deck by a considerable margin, I would say. Like, obviously, the next most played deck was Mono Red Synth, which is basically all the Mono Red decks, and you are almost close to double them. And then basically 19 made day 2 by 23 of Mono Red Synth made day 2. There's many reasons for that, obviously, and that's kind of what I wanna dive into. But first, for those that don't know what Jind is, so this deck here, we'll start with this one. This deck is essentially, it's a mid-range, more like a control deck, but it is technically a mid-range deck that utilizes the bridges, the Drossforge Bridge and the Slagwood Bridge, which are indestructible lands. It cleanses and wildfires its own indestructible lands to fix its mana, but also ramp it. Then it utilizes the extra mana that it gains from its opponent to cast the best, basically the best cards in Pauper right now, right? And that's Writhing Chrysalis, Refurb Familiar, draw spells like Eviscerator's Insight, Fanatical Offering, along with Blood Fountain, Echo Wellspring, and Lembas, right? That's how I'm going to leave it. I know obviously I've missed a lot of cards off there, but that is where I'm going to leave that. And that is basically what the deck does. It then, once it is stabilized, it will then win the game because of its best threats. And this deck has been around for quite a while. It was there in the last Paupergeddon, obviously did really well with Walker. Obviously, I think one of the creators of the deck, if not the creator of the deck. But this deck, basically, what it does, it sort of stabilizes the game, and the big pull for this deck, right, the big pull, which I cannot emphasize enough, is after every single card I have named. So you've got 4 Writhing Chrysalis, 4 Refurbs, you've got 4 Cleanse and Wildfire, you've got 20 to 21 lands, you have 2 to 3 Blood Fountains, 4 Echo Wellsprings, and I'm going to say 2 Lembas, but again, I think that's pretty customizable. And then you've got your 6 draw spells. So after that, you've literally named, 14, 18, 20 odd cards, maybe 30 cards, right? That is the core of the deck. Everything else that you see here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15, potentially 16, plus your 15 card sideboard, you have almost 30 cards of your 75 that are completely and utterly customizable. That is a great thing to have, right? And the great thing to have about that is basically you get to tune your deck to get edge, because you're a mid-range control deck, you get to effectively tune your deck to have the best cards to beat whatever matchups you want to beat. That's the idea, right? So you get to have your, for example, your cast downs. If you need to beat mid-range, if you need to beat single point removal, you need to do this, you need to have that single point removal to deal with this threat. This threat makes that matchup better, so therefore once that's gone, this matchup is free, blah 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 blah, bang. Cast down. Great card. But that's the reason. Sometimes you don't even need any. Ones if it's too expensive, you need to be on the earlier forms of removal or find 1 mana to fit that in. Golf Blast becomes an option. You're running 9-ish artifacts. You have the bridges and the vaults already because you're playing Affinity for this. So, like, Golf Blast becomes an option. That means that something like, I don't know, Elves or Mono Red or something like that becomes better because you have 1 mana piece of interaction. You can kill things while also casting other things and obviously kill important threats. You can have the big one, which a lot of people talk about, is Crackland. Crackland in the main deck obviously helps you go on the go wide strategies like Elves, White Weenie, Rally Red. But then if you want to go bigger, you can have Toxin Analysis, which is not even in this deck at all. If we go to Walker's list, and it's not even in there at all. So basically you could run a list like this and have obviously Toxin Analysis, which then fixes a lot of the decks and all that sort of stuff. Blah, and then you have obviously Duress, which is good against control decks or combo decks or whatever. Just stripping a card advantage out of the hand is obviously great, right? So we all kind of know that premises, right? And that's basically it, right? You've got this deck that has no real purpose. Its deck is just look how good I can survive, and Writhing Chrysalis, Blood Fountain, and Refurb will win me the game. That's totally fine, right? That is not a knock on the deck. That is what the deck is designed to do, and the deck is very good at that. It's got a lot of customizability. It has a lot of different ways to change up its answers, change up its things, all that sort of good stuff. And it can help its game against 90% of the format, and it can change its game to probably kill 20%, 30% of the format. The main pull for this deck is it's a 50-50 deck, right? It's a deck that has no good matchups, no bad matchups. It's how the deck pilots it, how the pilot makes the choices in deck build and in gameplay. And that is the big pull for the deck, right? If you believe there's going to be a lot of terror, a lot of dredge, etc., spell bombs in the main. You make that conscious choice. You verse against elves. You verse against red-green monsters. You verse against high tide, whatever. This spell bomb's dead. You chose to put it in the deck because you expected to verse this deck and that deck, right? So flip that on the other side, right? Jind Wildfire is the most played deck in the room. Everyone knew it was going to happen. Everybody knew Jind Wildfire is going to be the best deck. The exact list, however, was unknown. But the main thing you need to know is they're a Refurb, Writhing Chrysalis, Cleanse and Wildfire deck with weird mana base, but they can have a tech choice from anything from Cast Down to Golf Blast to Toxin to whatever to pull some Rasa. Right? So if that is the case, I'm going to sit down there as a Dredge player, for example. What in Jind do I care about? I care about the Spell Bomb, I care about the Crackland Shaman, and that's it. I care about the Pulse, if you can potentially play Pulse or Crypt Incursion. Right? So as you see here, Walker is playing 2 Pulses, 1 Crypt Incursion, 1 Spell Bomb, with no extra graveyard here in the side. But that there, so Spell Bomb, 2 Pulse, 1 Crypt Incursion. Right? So from that perspective, what then happens is you, as a Dredge player, are going in, and they're the cards I need to answer. I couldn't care less about the Writhing Chrysalis, couldn't care less about the Refurb Familiar, couldn't care less about the Cast Downs, couldn't care less about this, that, or whatever. You go in with a game plan. I am going to tackle these cards. These cards, they know how to tackle it. They're going to use Ancient Grudge, they're going to use Mass Vandal, they're going to use Mezfiend. Answered. Jobs are good. So, if they can get that plan down, they can turn that 50-50 matchup there, and then Jund's prepared for it, so they think it's a 60-40 matchup on their off chance they see their 4 or 5 cards, whatever it is. Okay, so they're most likely going to turn that back into a 50-50 matchup, or maybe even a 60-40 matchup because of how often it is to see the Pulse, the Spell Bomb, etc. And I'm taking the extreme of Dredge as an example because of that, right? I'm taking it because it's an extreme case that most people will understand because of obviously the graveyard hate. So that is all they care about, right? You swing that onto the side of the other thing of Elves. Okay, Elves, what do you care about? Actually, I only care about Crackland Shaman. You have 2 Crackland Shamans, 4 Cast Downs are annoying, but I only care about the 2 Crackland Shamans. They're the thing that actually ends the game, right? So how do I beat that? I can either go Jasper Birchlaw Rangers, have blue mana available, I can start Hydroblasting, Spellstutter Spriting, whatever the Crackland Shaman. That's my game plan, easy. Or if I'm mono green, I can basically go, I'm going to Mass Vandal, I'm going to Deglammer all your red sources. You only have 2 mountains in your deck and 4 Twisted Landscapes to find it. And I'm going to basically make it so all your artifacts are non-existent. You don't really have time to cast anything else bar this Crackland Shaman, and it's going to hit for 1. And my Priest of Titania's already lived because I've Deglammered, Mass Vandaled your bridges, etc. Your Crackland Shaman does nothing. Bob's a good one. You know, there we go. Moving on the side, we have 2 breath weapons again. Same sort of vibe. You can sort of do something similar. And they're literally the only 3, 4, 5 cards in your deck that they care about, right? My point I'm trying to make the long-winded way is every deck, Jind has tech choices for every single deck they want, right? You against High Tide, you have Pyroblast, you have this, you have that. Like, literally any deck. And obviously you're favoured, and I get it. You get the game 1 favour if you are prepared for the right deck. You lose that if you are not. Because the core is powerful, but it's not really anything, right? It's just a pile of good cards. It doesn't have any synergies, it doesn't have any blatant win cons. It's just, here's my powerful cards. I'm going to try and win game 1 by having these powerful cards and maybe have a card that is relevant for you. You know, Crackland Shaman, Spellbomb, etc. But on the other side, these decks are obviously prepared for their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards that they could potentially have. For them, mono red, exactly, Weather the Storm, etc. You know, game 1, they have Lembas, they have Pulse Marassa, etc. Like, and that is all they care about. They're not really bothered by anything else, especially like something like Madness, where they don't care about combat. Right? So we've established that basically this deck is, in theory, trying to get that 50-50 and edge it their way by their skill and their card choices in their main deck. That means then that pulls us on to, this pulls on, I'm going to put this on because of the, it's the last list that Walker tweeted on about, right? My main problem with this is basically, what I'm trying to say is, you are not teched against anything in particular, you're just teched against what you think is the field, but the field is also prepared for whatever your answers are. So, what actually ends up happening is Jind Wildfire doesn't have any real good matchups. It just goes to this 50-50 matchup constantly. So it's never this, I prey on this deck, I prey on that deck. It just hopes to draw well, find its 1 to 5 sideboard cards in the main, and then sideboards into more. That's basically the deck. And that is not a bad strategy at all. At all. And I'm not disputing that. That is a fine strategy to have. The pilot will take all the responsibility on the deck. Cool. But when you go back to the metagame, you have 165 out of 1,008 or whatever it was playing in day 1, playing Jind Wildfire. The one thing you end up doing, because of all these cast downs and the thing and the lack of toxin, etc., all that sort of stuff, is you actually end up unteching against anything. This list is just a generic list, right? It's not trying to beat up on elves, it's not trying to beat up on fairies, it's not trying to beat up on High Tide, etc. They are prepared for them, obviously, but they are not trying to beat up on anything in particular and then lose a matchup. It's just trying to be the generically best deck it can be as a all-around format. So what that's ended up meaning is basically the Jind Wildfire mirror is happening and you're just generically teched against the deck. So the mirror is going to be this horrendous matchup where it's just, I'm going to play bombs, you're going to play bombs, we're all going to draw some cards, we're all going to cast down some threats, and then it's whoever has the most mana, whoever draws this, whoever draws that. And that's how it comes down, right? We've seen it many, many, many times on camera if you did see it, right? So that's fair. Fair enough. Cool. That's how it works. But what that's meant is that basically a lot of the Jind Wildfire pilots were all in mirrors, all in these long-winded, I can't get through to win the game because they're all prepared for each other by being naturally the best deck they can be and not teched against anything. So 90% of them all ended up in the draw bracket. But once you're in the draw bracket, the other Jind Wildfire is also in the draw bracket. So then your next round is you're more likely to verse another Jind Wildfire. So they basically all ended up knocking each other out because they were all in the draw bracket. So that is why, in my opinion, from watching coverage, this is why we got this conversion rate. We literally just got this pile of Jind Wildfire over here in the draw bracket. because they all can't finish the game. They're all very good and all playing at reasonable speed and all that sort of stuff. But they're all just over here in the draw bracket versing each other while the tournament's going on over here. So we just got this problem of the deck. I think the problem is because most people took Walker's list, and Walker obviously is a very good pilot, knows the format, knows how to get edges in all sorts of matchups, didn't bring toxin analysis. Because of this, they were teched against other things, or wanted to have edge of being better decks against other things, because toxin's really bad in a lot of matchups. You end up generically being not great against anything, and just a good deck all round. So we get this sort of thing going on where you're just like kind of, okay, I'm going to beat this post board, hope for the best, blah, blah, blah. Like, that makes sense. But you're kind of not doing anything. You're not... Because if you build your deck and you build Mored Synth and you're like, right, okay, I'm going to not be able to beat this deck because I can't beat it. It does this, it does that. Okay, you can either board 10 sideboard cards to make it maybe a 50-50 matchup, or you can board 0 cards and just hope for the best. Because you've kind of not got that agency in Jind Wildfire now, you've just got this, here's a generically good deck, it's going to do generically okay things, and I'm going to do generically okay, but I'm actually going to verse the mirror and not be able to close the game out most of the time. Bang, there you go. That means that basically what I'm trying to say is, if they committed to playing these cards that are good against elves, good against fairies, good against this, good against that, they probably would have had a better time. Obviously, you can see the top 16 list is slightly different to Walker's list. Obviously, looking at it, not really by much. It's not got a Crypt Incursion in, it's not got the third Crackland Shaman in. It's got an extra land in, I think. No, it's not got an extra land in. But it's not that much different. It's not got the Crypt Incursion. It's got 2 Duresses in the main, which again, a card that helps you have answers to, I don't know, control decks, put the last pressure through, make sure your makeshift munitions or your Nyxborn Hydra Resolve. Those are real things, even against the mirror. So that, like, if your answer is also tech against the mirror, that is still an answer. Like, if you find a card that is good in the mirror, that's fine. Tech against the mirror. But we just have this generically good list that is just putting everybody in the draw bracket. And like, I'm not even touching on the gameplay experience and the coverage experience of watching Jind Wildfire. Obviously, Sapo mentioned over the weekend that, it's not really that exciting to watch, and I get that, but that's beside the point. This is basically all about the reason Jind didn't do well at Paupergeddon. It is basically because, the long and story short is, they knocked them all of themselves out of the event. They're all sat here, 165 players and 19 made day 2, all because they all versed each other, drew, put themselves in the draw bracket, and ended up squabbling in a corner. That's basically what happened. They just effectively knocked themselves out of the tournament. I'm not saying that other people didn't do well, right? There was a fair bit in the top 32. There was only 1 in the top 16. You've literally got Fair, shout out to Skura, obviously High Tide, Mono Blue Terror, Familiars. Like, Familiars had a great weekend. Familiars not only won the top part of the player, but had 2 in the top 16. Like, that's pretty good. You're just not teched against anything. This list is good. It's generically good, but it does nothing of anything. It's just a generically good list. I am going to 50-50, and then I'm going to 50-50 everyone, and I'm going to get edges by me knowing my deck better. Which, again, could be an issue. Maybe they didn't know the deck better. But that is how I see this deck. This deck is a fine, okay mid-range deck. It is definitely not worth being the most played deck, and it's definitely not probably one of the decks to bring to a massive event like this, in my opinion. If you want 50-50 and go player skill, sure. But if you have 100, if it's going to be the most played deck in the room, play something else, because you're just going to knock yourself out the tournament. Or seriously tech for the mirror, because you do not want to knock yourself out of the tournament. That's basically that, and that is why I also think Jind was the biggest letdown of the room, and it just failed miserably because of that. It could not finish games to save its life against certain decks. It has abysmal other matchups, and for example, if I just hide this, so we can see Green Red Monsters, right, had 24 people in day 1, 3 made day 2. which is a pretty abysmal conversion rate. Green Red Monsters was not one of the best decks, considering, you know, it does something very strong, but obviously most Jind Wildfire pilots should have been tech for Mono Blue Terror, should have been tech for Elves, which then gives you Toxin Analysis, which then makes this a really bad matchup. Right? What actually ends up happening is nobody expects Green Red Monsters. They don't bring in Toxin Analysis to be a generically good deck. 3 day 2, 2 of them top 8'd. Like, this, it's not like this decided what top 8'd, but because this sort of sat in a corner, squabbling in the draw bracket, everything else was great. Everything else was sat there doing its own thing, doing whatever it wanted, and not having a control deck a control mid-range deck to compete. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. That's great. Like, that is fantastic. You take Jind Wildfire out of this equation. Like, look, the control deck being FAMs, right? Had an incredible conversion. 20 pilots and 8 of them, nearly half of them. Day 2'd. That's pretty incredible. Like, we have some cool decks here, and it was a great event. Fantastic event. But yeah, the big thing is, the Jind Wildfire problem is the fact that its problem is itself. If you are expecting a lot of Jind Wildfire, just pick a different deck. That's my advice. So, I just want to talk about, obviously, a slight meta breakdown on the Jind Wildfire piles, and see what happened, because everyone expected it to win, everyone expected it to do well, and it just flopped. So that's why I just thought, let's just take a look in to see why. Let me know what you think about this video, guys. Obviously, it is not a rant about how bad the deck is, how good the deck is. So the deck is great, the deck does well, it's a pile of good cards, you can't go too far wrong with a Refurb, Writhing Chrysalis pile. It just had no answers for anything, and that's probably its problem. But let me know what you think on why Jind Wildfire failed at Paupergeddon, or didn't do as well as we expected. Was it just too prepared? Everyone was too prepared for it, or do you think it was just everyone was fighting in the draw bracket, or a mix of both? The deck is equally a very good deck and a very overrated deck. That's what Geddon has shown me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Obviously, best way to support me. We're on our way to 3K subscribers, and of course, thank you Daybreak for all the opportunities, and I'll see you guys in the next one.